In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever.
Who is wondrous in his saints. 26 years ago, about 26, I wandered into this little bookstore in town, and I met some very interesting people who sent me on a journey, you might say. It was this little bookstore that was run by a little Orthodox church. Happens to have been this one. And these people were so strange when I met them, and I thought, I have to come back and see them. Again, I was so pleasantly disturbed by what I saw. These people were different, and they had something that I wanted. Namely books, but I also wanted this love that they shared with them. So I was so taken aback by the way they loved each other. And I had to come back again and again. And I remember coming home and telling Matishka, I love these weird little people. Let's go back. They're different than anything I've ever seen. Come and see. And she came and saw and says, no. We were very happy at our church, you see. We were very happy in our community. Heck, we bought a house so that we could be close to our church. And that was altogether fine. And then, what are you talking about? No, these people are a little too strange for me. Well, like all husbands, we listen to our wives. That's a joke. We don't, most of us. And I had to read. They had these books there. And I would take one home and read it. I was working 2 jobs, and she was raising the children. I was reading books, and she was raising the children. I had a lot of time on my hands, and she was raising the children. And I was learning, and she was raising the children and probably very exhausted. And I picked this one book up. And it really changed my life. It was very transformative. It was a book about the saints of Alaska. It's called Orthodox Alaska. I think I probably should pick up the updated copy, but this was 26 years ago, and there have been more American saints added to that list. It was called Orthodox Alaska. And it was all about the story of the Orthodox entry into the United States by way of the Alaskan Purchase, and those holy men and women who shone forth, who came in through Alaska, at least at the beginning. Now, I've never been to Alaska. To date, I have not yet been to Alaska. I have many friends there. Many friends. But I have not yet been able to go. You may have heard it's expensive to travel. But having read that book, I had this experience of saying, my goodness, there are people in my country, in this land, there are men and women who are holy, who are known to have been holy, who came from among my people. When we read about the saints, I was raised Catholic. We had saints. I even had favorite saints. And many of them came from far away. Many of them came from long ago. It doesn't make them any less important or any less significant in my life or our life. But there was not I don't want to say overuse the word visceral, but there was not a tangible connection to them. You're telling me there's people from the United States who are holy here? Can anything good come out of America? Nazareth, Galilee? Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Can anything good or holy come out of these United States? I wasn't expressing a poor opinion of the United States. I just was rather taken aback that we had holy men and women here who were holy enough that they were recognized to have put on Christ, who had affected the life of the church in such a way that they were proclaimed as holy. They were canonized as saints. Their intercessions had been well known to have brought about the Lord working miracles in our midst. That book changed my life. So much so that 2 years later, when we're baptizing our two oldest children in the Catholic Church, I told my wife that day, I'm going to the Orthodox Church next week, and I'll understand if you don't come with me. And, after she picked her jaw up off the floor, she said, I'm not going to become Orthodox because you do. And I said, it's okay. That's not a good idea to do something like that just because I do. She said, but I'm not going to go to a different church than you do. So in humility, she followed me. Not really kicking and screaming, but theoretically. And what is this weird husband of mine? What journey is he trying to take me on now? I kept reading about these saints, these North American saints. Learning their stories, experiencing this transformative understanding of we as a people are called to be holy. America is and shall be holy. It isn't a transcendent, faraway concept. We are meant to be holy in this land. The people who were born and raised and drew their life from this very soil have sanctified it with their sacrifice and their sacrificial existence. They have borne witness to the cross. They have borne witness to the gospel in their lives, some of them even having given their lives. We have martyred saints on our soil. We have saints who existed on our soil and were martyred in other lands as well. That's pretty significant. Saints come from America. We don't just grow produce in the heartland, in the breadbasket of whatever, the West or whatever they call us, or used to call us or something. We grow holiness. We grow holy people. Perhaps that's our greatest export, is holiness. Can you imagine? We eat a horrible diet. That's not a very good export. We export a lot of things that some people may object to. We may, in some people's eyes, embody a vision of humanity that is not appealing to some. We may be a symbol of bad and good and whatever across the world. You can go anywhere in the world and find differing opinions of the United States, whatever that means today. But the chiefest, most important export of this country is holiness. And it's for everyone, regardless of where one would consider oneself in a from an ideological standpoint. Our most important domestic product is holiness. We celebrate today the Feast of All Saints of North America. It is always germane to whichever country. The 2 Sundays after Pentecost, the first Sunday we celebrate the Feast of All Saints. Remember, I said last Saturday was Halloween for us. It was the Feast of All Saints. Sometimes I like to call it the Feast of Y'all Saints because you are called to this very same holiness. It's the Feast of Y'all Saints last week. Well, today is the Feast of All Saints of North America. If we were in Russia, it would be the Feast of All Saints of Russia. Wherever you are, it's the Feast of All Saints of your country. 2 weeks after Pentecost. And so today we commemorate all saints of North America that have shown forth. We have an icon with most of them, but thankfully they're not all here, because guess what? We added a few since that icon was written. That's good. We should always have an icon that is missing someone. If you ever see any icon of a synaxis is just a grouping of saints, synaxis of this, that, or the other, it should always be missing someone. Because there are always more to be made. There are always more to be identified. Those who have put on Christ, who have embodied a humility and a holiness that has demonstrated to their people the way of the cross, the way of humility. When they were uncovering the relics, I think back in November or something like that, of Holy Olga of Alaska, who this past week, was officially canonized among the American saints. And for the first time in liturgical practice here, we sang her tropar and kondak during the before the reading of the gospel, when we sing the propers. Those words have never been proclaimed in the church to date, because they were waiting for that time when the church canonized her officially. The proclamation of her canonization went out 2 years ago, but the liturgical act of canonization happened this week. And when they were uncovering her relics in, like I said, November or something, they dug through the permafrost. They, for some reason, decided to exhume her when it was cold and snowy. They were able to dig for hours, reading from the scriptures the entire time. They dug deep, deep down into the dirt where she lay for 46 years. And they brought her beautiful relics out of the ground and placed her in St. Nicholas Church in Queetlook, Alaska, on the Kuskokwim River, this little village where she lived and worked. She was the wife of the postmaster, but he was also the village priest. The humility with which she lived her life is legendary. If you are present and are care to stay after liturgy today, after we give the dismissal and bless the food, we'll have an akathist to Holy Olga. We'll celebrate that service. You are not forced to be here. If you're hungry, go eat. But we will celebrate the akathist to St. Olga here at St. Andrew's. And if you listen to the words in those in the hymns to St. Olga, you will hear how humble she was and how ordinary she was. When they were exhuming her, when they were uncovering her relics, they had a live stream. God bless technology. We could all watch. It was beautiful to see friends of mine who are brothers in the clergy who I know very well and love, standing in her grave, taking turns pulling out shovels full of dirt, or singing, chanting the scriptures by her graveside while the other brethren undug this beautiful saint from the ground. Tiny bit of envy. I was like, oh, lucky. I would have loved to have been there for that. The live stream was halted when they pulled her out. Archbishop Alexei said it is better for us to pull her out without the whole world seeing. The lid of the casket had caved in, and so they weren't sure what they would find. And so I asked a friend. I have many brothers up there among the clergy. I said, the suspense is killing me. What was it like? How was she? He's like, well, her remains were skeletal. Naturally, when the casket were to cave in, and that's likely to happen. Many times, it's not the only indicator of sanctity when someone's relics are incorrupt. But that is obviously not the only indicator of sanctity. So her relics were not, in fact, incorrupt. They were skeletal, mostly. But what he did tell me was this, and it was very significant, not to go unnoticed. What was very visible was her body cross, her neck cross, right where it needed to be, right where it had been, where she had worn it over her breast all of her life, faithfully. The cross ever before her heart. That was still there. What was still there was the head covering on her head in perfect shape, perfectly placed. A symbol of humility. Yupik are a very traditional people. You will not see Yupik women in the church without their head covered. And her head covering was still there. This was very significant. That was what he noticed first, was that the cross over her breast was where it belonged. And the head covering was, her image of sanctity was there. That's not something that should go unnoticed. She embodied humility in such a way that we should not look away. We should not have it miss our attention. It is the very kind of humility that is a servant of God. The kind of humility that looks toward the cross, that draws its life from the love of Christ, this perfect symbol of sacrifice, this perfect symbol of love. This was what she looked to. This is what people like her understood about themselves. This was the image of perfection for her. We have seen these holy men and women shine forth from our soil, among our people. That is meant to send a message to you and I. It is meant to remind us of our great calling. Again, last week was the Feast of All Saints, but it's really the Feast of Y'all Saints. Maybe this is the Feast of Yun Saints, or You Saints today. We are all meant to answer that call. We are all meant to embody, to put on Christ. The cross that we wear upon our breast, over our heart. The humility that we cover ourselves with, or try to, or at least invite the Holy Spirit to cover us with, to teach us, to lead us toward the taking up of our cross and letting that, the way we live our lives, and the way we think, and the attitudes that we keep, the state of our heart, being vigilant over the state of our heart. This is meant to lead us toward a perfection and humility that is an indicator of how we have put on Christ. Every single one of these men and women who have shown forth in our land is a proof to you and I that you are a chief contributor to our greatest export. It is holiness. When we sing propers to these men and women, all you holy men and women, pray to God for us. We are meant to anticipate that entreaty coming to our ears after we die. We are meant to prayerfully anticipate the Lord making us holy. Now, don't get cocky there. I know how I live my life. I know the state of my heart at any given time is far from humble. I know that the way I live my life is far from the image of humility that would suggest that I have put on Christ. I am very aware of it, painfully. I wish it was perhaps more painful, because maybe I would do better. But I'm not going to be tempted by despair because of that. I refuse to be tempted by despair, because I know what the redeeming qualities of Christ have been shown to mankind. See only the thief on the cross, who had no merits of his existence, but he said to Jesus anyway, "Remember me in thy kingdom." And he was justified in a single moment. "Tonight indeed you will be with me today in paradise." I know that the Lord sees my paltry efforts and matches those efforts in much greater amounts than I've given. If we have faith like a mustard seed, and we act on that faith a little, the Lord does a lot. When a man is ordained, the prayer of the priesthood or the diaconate or whatever, the bishop lays hands on him and says, "The grace divine that always completes that which is lacking and always heals that which is infirm. Elevate this man to be a deacon, a priest, whatever." We all are participants in the priesthood of all believers. Christ's priesthood is not withheld from anyone. And so that prayer, that the Lord will complete that which is lacking and heal that which is infirm, is for all of us. When we hear that prayer said over the man who's being ordained or elevated to a higher rank or whatever in the clergy, we're not to recognize that as a separate thing. It's Christ's priesthood. We all participate in it. The man being ordained in a maybe a specific way, but that is a prayer for us too. When we yell out and proclaim axios when the man has been ordained, and the people shout axios, having heard that prayer, that's a prayer that's spoken into their hearts. The Lord will complete that which is lacking. If in humility we approach him saying, "I have brought nothing, Lord. I have got nothing, Lord." The Lord's uncontrollable response is, "I have everything. It's for you. I am able to accomplish these things. I have accomplished these things on your behalf. See this cross? Take it up and follow me. My burden is easy and my yoke is light." This is how you put on Christ. You submit yourself. You yield the hardness of your heart to being formed by the Holy Spirit. This is the image of humility. Let the Lord's love and forgiveness fill you with humility. There's nothing you can do to gain humility other than submit, other than yield. How do I yield? Well, ask the Holy Spirit to help you. Look towards the example of the saints. Look toward this brand new, newly elevated, newly canonized woman and the way she lived her life. This is how we embody humility. Saints come from our land. Saints come from your house. This is the feast of y'all saints. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever.
Oh. His Eminence Alexei has said that the relics of St. Olga will be kept in the church at St. Nicholas in Kwiatluk, and very few relics will be disseminated, at least right now, for the time being, of Holy Olga. And what most of the folks can anticipate is being allowed to have earth from her grave. And so in this small reliquary, we have earth from the grave of St. Olga of Alaska. It was given to us by Father Maxim from St. Nicholas Parish in Juneau, a friend of ours. And so we have the earth from her grave, this holy earth that held her holy, beautiful relics these last 40-some years. So we at least have that. Stay tuned. Maybe someday we'll get a relic. But for the time being, we have the earth from her grave. So that's nothing insignificant. So it's here for your veneration.